Hello everyone, this is now part 3 of verbs in grammar. You need to watch part 1 and part 2. Now the question is, what are the different types of verbs? What are the different types of verbs? Okay, so let's look at the answer. We have two types of verbs, main verbs and auxiliary verbs. I explained main verbs in part 2, and now we are going to explain auxiliary verbs in part 3. Auxiliary verbs cannot be used on their own. So Helen is speaking Italian. Is a verb, this is a verb, and I'm using it to make present continuous. So I cannot use is in a sentence on its own unless in some situation, because we can use verb to be as a main verb and as an auxiliary verb. If you say the word is, here it is a main verb, but the word is, it means the word exists, so here is a main verb. But if you say Helen is speaking Italian, here I'm using is to help me to make the present continuous tense. So auxiliary verbs cannot be used in their own. Auxiliary verbs cannot be dynamic. They are not dynamic. They are dynamic. It means if something is dynamic, if a verb is dynamic, it has action. So auxiliary verbs have no action in them. They are not dynamic. Or stative. Even we cannot say they are stative. Why is that? Because they don't make sense when we use them on their own. So we cannot use auxiliary verbs on their own. We cannot. It means the meaning is not complete without, if you use an auxiliary verb, the meaning is not complete. Of course, I speak in general because verb to do, verb to be, and verb to have can be used as main verbs and as auxiliary verbs. But forget do, forget be, forget have. We have 23 auxiliary verbs and we cannot use them in a sentence on their own. So 23 auxiliary verbs, we cannot use them in a sentence on their own. This means we cannot say they are, dynamic or stative. Because, auxiliary verbs only help us, to make questions, to make tenses, to make negative. I will explain this, more. So again, auxiliary verbs are not finite because they don't show tense. There is no tense for auxiliary verbs. Maybe you see the tense, but it's not complete. You can see would is past of will. I understand. But you cannot use would and stop. You need another verb with would. So the tense, you cannot say I would, my friend. No, you have to say I would visit my friend. So would, you can see it is past tense, but it is not complete. It's not complete. Person, again, first person is I and we, second person is you, third person is he, she, it, and they. Or number, singular, as you know, I is singular, he, she, it, again singular. Plural, we and they are plural. You can be singular if you mean one person, when you speak to one person, and if you speak to a group you say you, this is plural. So auxiliary verbs are not finite. They don't have a tense. You see the tense, but it's not complete. And we cannot use them in a sentence on their own. So in general, forget, as I said, do and be and have. If you forget these three verbs, auxiliary verbs cannot be used in a sentence on their own. Auxiliary verbs help us to make questions, negative, and tenses. So they are important. Why are they important? because they help us to make questions, to make negative, to make tenses. So auxiliary verbs are important. Number D, auxiliary verbs are always irregular. They are not regular. Or defective. They are defective and they are not regular. We cannot add the third person singular s to them, and we cannot add an ing to them, and we cannot add ed to them in the past. So I cannot say George musts go. It's wrong. I cannot add s to must. I can say George goes, but not George musts go. This means must is not regular. It doesn't take an s. I musted. I cannot make must past. So must is not regular. George is musting. Again, it has no meaning, you know. So I cannot put an ing. So I cannot put s. I cannot put ed. I cannot put ing to auxiliary verbs. It means they are defective. It means something is missing about them. They are different from main verbs. They don't follow, you know, the rule, the grammatical rule of main verbs. Number E, auxiliary verbs cannot be transitive or intransitive because we cannot use auxiliary verbs on their own. The best way to understand auxiliary verbs is to think they are helping verbs. Auxiliary verbs are helping verbs, and they help us to make questions, they help us to make negative, and they help us to make tenses. We only use the adjectives transitive and intransitive with main verbs. So Harry threw a ball. Threw is a main verb. A ball is the object. So threw takes an object. This means threw is a transitive verb. So ball is an object. So threw is a transitive verb. VT in the dictionary, they write VT. VT means verb transitive. This means it takes an object after it. Harry swims well. Well is not an object. So swim is an intransitive verb. Intransitive verb. What does it mean? It means it doesn't take an object after it. In a dictionary, they put VI. V means verb, I means intransitive. Modal verbs are a type of auxiliary verbs. So modal verbs are a type of auxiliary verbs. I'll put a video on auxiliary verbs and I'll put a video on modal verbs. But you need to understand this basic information before you watch auxiliary verbs and modal verbs. Modal verbs show how you feel or what you think about anything. They show your attitude. Your attitude means how you feel about something, what you think about it. This is what modal verbs do. So if I say, my partner will be at home, what is the meaning of will is a modal verb? Here, I put a line. Of course, will be is the verb. Will be is the verb. But will is a modal verb. And I said a modal verb shows your opinion or your attitude or your feeling. So will be, what does it mean? It means it is probable that my partner will be at home. Or I predict, I guess that my partner will be at home. If you say your friend may be right, again, maybe is the verb, it's in blue. May is the modal verb. My friend, your friend may be right. What is the meaning of maybe? It means it is possible that your friend is right. Next one, auxiliary verbs are called secondary verbs. Secondary verbs means they are not main verbs or helping verbs. Why do we call them helping verbs? Because they help us to make questions, negative or tenses. So does Lucy drive fast? I use does. Does is the auxiliary verb. I use it to ask a question. Lucy does not drive fast. I use does to again make negative. Lucy is driving so fast. I use is to make the present continuous. Is driving. What is the tense? Is driving. It is present continuous. How do I make it? I use is. I use verb. I use ing. So I use the auxiliary verb is to make present continuous. This is the table, if you want to watch it, about main verbs, auxiliary verbs. You can look at it and this will help you. Just I will read maybe number 1, 2. Main verbs can be used in their own. Yes. Main verbs can be used in their own. Auxiliary verbs can be used in their own. No. Main verbs have different names of types. Yes. Auxiliary verbs have different types, names and types. Yes. So look at this table. This is a summary. This is all the information about main verbs and auxiliary verbs. But I'll put videos on auxiliary verbs, more information, and videos on, again, modal verbs. I think more than one part on auxiliary verbs and modal verbs. So again, if you go to google.com and you type exercises on verbs, Google will give you thousands of websites, so you can do more practice online. Thank you for watching this video. Please click on subscribe to encourage me to write more and to explain grammar to you in a very easy and interesting way, I hope. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learn and you continue to learn from these videos in future on my channel. Thank you.